Yo, welcome back to another episode of UX Dive. I am your host, Rizwan. Today we'll be talking about Photoshop again. And this time we are going to be talking about transforming whenever you have shapes, whenever you have layers, whatever you may have. And if we have time, we're going to get into the text tool and, the different variations and how you can play around with that. So as you can see in my recording here, I have a blank document. I've just made a random document and made it 1080 by 1080. So yeah, we have our document, we have our interface as usual. So I'm going to create a random shape. Let's do blau and that. So yeah, you have your shape, and as we talked about in the last episode, you can play around with the parameters, the fill, the stroke, all you need to do, and whatever shape you need to create, you can just play around with it. But the focus of this episode, which is the transform, can be accessed either by pressing Command and T or Control T for for Windows users, or if you select the layer and you have these dots or squares around the shape, if you click any one of them, it brings up, see the controls are different because you have now the width of the shape and the height, and you see it's locked, and all your different parameters. So for the shape, the most simple thing that you can think about is making it bigger, right? So what you do is you click and you drag up or down, whichever transformation that you need to do. And a cool thing with this is that usually if it's not locked, this is how you tell it's locked. It's that chain thing. So what happens when it's locked is that when you're sizing up, the proportions stay the same. But in cases where it's not, you just press the shift and you have your sizing up going proportionately. Another cool thing is when you're sizing up, you might need to be sizing it according to a specific center. So if you want it to maintain the center where it's at, what you do is you press the Alt as you're transforming it, or I guess Option on Mac, but Alt on Windows. Right. So what will happen is that it will continue sizing up based on the center that was there before, and that's always really important because if you're just sizing up randomly, it goes to a new center and you have to refigure it out, all that. That's always cool. The next transformation that we're going to do, we're just going to talk about the basic transformations. If we right click the shape, there's this context menu that comes up, and there's all of these different transformations that you can play around with. The basic ones are, flipping horizontally and flipping vertically. That's, if you're flipping horizontal, it's like on a straight line. So you have, this is important for, when you have patterns that you need to reflect. Flipping vertically is of course like this. So always important. You can just always play around with it and see what you can do with that. There's rotate 180 and rotate 90 clockwise, counterclockwise. I think clockwise is like that. I guess for you it's different. Yeah, counterclockwise and clockwise. I'm hoping you'll understand it. So you can use this, or when you have your shape and you've pressed Command T, or you've triggered the command panel, when you go right above any one of the corners, there's this a curved arrow, and that's usually the one that's used for rotations, right? So if you click the shape, and you start rotating wherever you want it to go, you'll see it start moving, right? And this is the rotation that happens, and you'll see the number of the degrees for all you math freaks. If you want to have a specific number when you're rotating it, you can have that. The same thing applies to this as with keeping proportions, is that if you click shift, you will be going, you'll be rotating in terms of even amounts, right? So it's usually like 15 degrees. So you can see it always locks to 15 degrees from where you're moving, right? So if you're from 0, you have 15, 30, 45, blah, 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 all that, right? So the next transformation that we can do is perhaps, let's do distort, eh? So what happens with the distortion is that you have, you can kind of distort the shape based on the vertices of the shape, right? So if you have a square, you have, or maybe a rectangle, you have the 4 corners. And if you distort, you're going to be distorting based on those different corners, right? So you can always play around with that and just, play around with distorting the shape. But the corners will always, the shape will always stay in straight lines, right? So that's the thing with distort. The other transformation that you can make, which is a bit more extreme, do back and back. Oh, by the way, undo is Command Z or Control Z. The other transformation that you can do, which is a bit more extreme, is the warp. And now for this is when you're creating like really, if you think about a page flipping, or like when you take a page and then you just, give it up like just a little bit, you can imagine what the warp is. So because a page is usually, like say a rectangle, for example, but then when you go to turn it, you have this like, curved page, right? So for this, it's pretty much the same, but now instead of with the distorts where you're changing just the lines or like the angles of the lines, with this, you're changing the points. So you're moving the points as if you're moving perhaps with like a pen tool, right? So if you take one corner and you move it, you see it's looking like if you take a sheet and then you lift it up, right? So this is changing the shape, like the literal makeup of the shape, because you're changing it according to the points of the shape, right? So for example, for the thing I was talking about, the page, you'd have something like this, right? You'd have the page is being peeled back, right? And of course you have to click the little tick and make sure your text is your transformations are affected. And yeah, I think that's how you can create custom shapes. I think you can play around with this and play around with the distort, the warp, the scale, whatever you need. I think it's always just a matter of what do you need in your project and what can you use. And yeah, it's been your host, Josué Nduwayo. Have a good day.